Happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Here we go. Here we go. Let's finish it strong. Who wants to share a little bit of gratitude, something good going on in their world? What do we have? What's bringing you some joy? I'll tell you what brought me some joy. Yesterday, I had my first peppermint mocha creamer. It's a little early. We already got Christmas trees up in our house, but peppermint mocha creamer just brings me joy. Who's got something? Yeah.
I got something cool to share. So
Yeah.
I helped Tuesday stop a forest fire from spreading too crazily. So I was out in the woods hunting for deer and turkey, and I ended up finding a small little like burning bush that I wasn't sure. I thought it was like kids just playing it out in the woods. So I went over to inspect it, and I saw like three more larger like plumes of smoke in the back. Called in 911, and I was the first one to call it in. I got to meet the fire department and show them everything was, and I had a tracking device on my phone, so I was able to literally pinpoint it all. It was pretty cool. So that's my share for this week.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I can't say I've ever checked that box. That is pretty cool.
And here's another cool, Steve. The song Boston, or the band that you were playing, I grew up in Swampscott, so I hung out with Barry Goudreau's son and saw their what the velvet suit that they all wore. He had it down in his basement the entire time, so that was pretty cool. So.
Very cool. Very cool. Great share. Hopefully it put a smile on everybody's face. Has anybody else stopped a forest fire? I think you're in the top 1%, John.
Thank you.
Very cool. Well, we Friday, or Finance Friday, is upon us. So I'll just open it up before I let Dan, or I don't know if Eric's on as well, speak. Let's just see if anybody's got any finance questions for these guys. What do we got out there? Anybody got something going on funky on a deal, or curious about a program, or what do you guys want to know about finance? Amber.
I have a weird one. I have a new build that went under agreement back in February. And it's a new build, of course. So we had written the contract up for the new build with no financing contingencies, as they were selling their house in the Cape, and for much more money. And they said if they needed anything for incidentals, it wasn't a big deal, yada, yada, yada. So now we're into middle of November. And we just got an email from, it was sent over to Kate, the attorney, and she's away today, or this weekend, and we've been going back and forth, but we don't have the reason why, but the bank is asking for the guy, so husband and wife, so the husband to be taken off of the purchase and sale, and only have her on the purchase and sale. Before, we've written up kind of an addendum. We don't really have the reasoning. I'm planning on calling my client today. But I just don't want to send up any red flags to the other side, although it's really too late because they've done $100,000 in additional upgrades and paid for it out of pocket. So they would probably lose their shirt on this one. So just wondering from a standpoint of the bank, why would they prefer to do it this way? Is there any implications, anything that I should worry about?
Hey, Amber. So actually,
Hold on, Dan,
me.
before you dive in, I just want to summarize here and just make sure. So we were going to be paying cash, and then all of a sudden, three-quarters of the way through the deal here, they're thinking they need to get a loan. Is that
Well, they had said that they would have like probably a small mortgage, but they may just remortgage the property after but then, the amount of stuff that they've added, which has been a thorn in my side because they're doing it with the builder directly, which isn't a big deal, but I've had no knowledge of them going to the property, things like that. So the listing agent and I kind of have been trying to stay on the same page. I would call her for something. She's like, oh, just so you know, they were there this week. This is what they were doing. Or I would call her and say, hey, just so you know, I'd like to stop by the property. And I've been trying to keep them out of the loop a little bit, as far as I don't want them constantly going there and bothering the builder. So I've been saying, hey, I'll stop by there once a week, even though it's an hour from me. So that, I can check on the progress, and I'll send you pictures. I'll give you updates. And come to find out, they've been really talking to the builder the whole time. So again, not a big deal, but if we don't know, things aren't getting in contract, etc. I've explained that to them, but they seem to not care. I just want to make sure that there's nothing, I don't want to say shady
right?
going
So
on, but why would
right.
they,
So
why
then,
would they just want one on and not the other? They
right.
both,
So let's bring it back. So they're going through that. We're adding all this stuff, and they're like, all right, we're going to have to get a small loan here. So they do the application. The assumption is that they're going to get this small mortgage. They're both going to be on it, and then 30 days later, they're coming back and saying we got to remove somebody, or like just trying to get the timeline of events here.
well, I know the bank's been involved for about a month or so. Yes. And um, again,
And now all of a sudden they're saying, well, we don't want both of you on it. We want one person.
yeah. And again, I don't know if it's for their own financial reasons or whatever. I mean, there's no way they can get out of it. I just don't want any blowback. Like, I want to let them, like, I'm calling them today being like, hey, is there any reason, like, what's going on?
I mean, so typically we wouldn't really care about like both of them being on the purchase and sale contract and only one of them being on the loan. Like that's done all the time. So I don't know why they would really come back and want him taken off of the contract, even if the loan were going to be done in just the other, just the spouse's name. So I really don't know exactly why they would want that, unless there's something funky going on with his income. If his I don't know, like say he's self-employed, he's got business. Like I don't really know why they would reason to want him not to be on the contract, even if, like I said, the loan was only in the spouse's name.
Okay. That was my thought. And then I'm like, okay, do they think like somehow they're going to get out of the which I don't think so. The amount of, literally, if you saw this house, I mean, the stuff that they put in this house is ridiculous. And they've already put up close to almost $200,000. So, which I'm assuming they would lose, because hello, we signed another contract that states all upgrades are non-refundable. So, all right, just wanted to touch base and see if there was anything before I call them today.
And so your plan is you haven't told the listing agent they want this person removed from the contract. Let me talk to the lender, find out why, and then have a conversation.
Yeah, she called me yesterday freaking out because the appraiser called and she's like, hey, I just got notice from the appraiser. She's like, they realized that this isn't going to appraise for, I mean, it was, 565, another, whatever it is, 100 and whatever $1,000. She's like, this house will not appraise for the total mortgage. So I don't know what they're doing. And I said, let me, I'm not stressed about it. They sold their house in the Cape, blah, blah, blah. So, and this was at the beginning, they were done closed as of March. But again, I'm going to try to touch base with them because she's now freaking out. And I don't know if technically they have to sign this addendum or whatever, to remove him because it's so late in the process. And what could happen? Like, what would the good, bad, and ugly be of it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would check in with them and see what their reasoning is and what the explanation is as to why they would want one of them removed. But like I said, as far as like, even if the loan were in just one's name, both can be on the contract. It's done all the time. So there must be something going on in the background that they probably got to find out about.
Meg,
Amber, you mentioned that the purchase price was like mid fives, and then you said they had significant amount of upgrades. Are they trying to mortgage like 700,000, or are they trying to mortgage the purchase price in the contract?
Well, originally this was supposed to be a cash deal with a small, so I don't know what they're trying to do, which is why I need to call them today.
Okay.
Because I need more information. Again, when buyers and sellers keep us out of the loop and don't tell us what their plan is, this is the kind of crap that I mean, there's been a lot of stuff. I mean, they've been going to the property when they weren't supposed to. I've tried to keep him in check, and he just has his own mind.
It's honest. It's really hard with new construction. Everyone gets really excited. So this, I have to be honest, this happens a lot. So don't feel like maybe they're trying to cut you out. It just, sometimes it happens naturally. Like the builder's trying to make a quick decision. He just calls them directly to get an answer. So don't feel like, they're doing it on purpose. Sometimes it just happens naturally, but definitely get a hold of the lender to find out what exactly amount they're trying to finance, because obviously the contract price is one thing, but if they're trying to finance some of those upgrades that they've paid cash for, that's where you're going to run into a problem.
Right. And again, I don't think he's trying to, I mean, we have a contract. They're actually paying me above what the builder, they do, occasionally will email with a question and ask my opinion, which is usually not the same as theirs, because for some reason they have this notion that they can do anything they want. But and he's always appreciative. He always wants to meet for a coffee, things like that. They're definitely high maintenance. Very nice people, though. So I just want to get a background, but I didn't know from a banking standpoint what the reasoning could be. That's all.
Meg, can you just talk a little bit more, maybe like, because you've done so much new construction, is there a better process to like, are you almost just acknowledging right up front and just putting them in contact? Do you even try and keep the parties not in contact? Like if we've got a buyer's agent that's going into a new construction deal, how do you recommend they handle the conversations with either the listing agent or the seller or et cetera?
Sure. So what we do at the start of a project, once we're at contract time, we create like a group text message that has everybody on it, both buyer parties. If there's two agents, both agents, and then the builders. That way there's a written log of any conversations that have had. Also, if we have any in-person meetings, like to follow those up with an email, just highlighting what was discussed so everyone's on the same page. But yeah, in terms of financing, again, just trying to keep everybody on the same page. If there is a change in financing, I know our contracts are pretty ironclad in the sense that, when you sign a contract, if you're paying cash, you're paying cash. And if you can't get the financing and that's not a part of your initial contract, then that's going to be a problem. And to Amber's point, a lot of those extra payments or however the contract dictates will be non-refundable.
Yeah,
you're
sorry.
Go ahead, Amber.
We've kind of tried to do that. But again, the builder calls him, he calls the builder. The listing agent is really, was really adamant at the beginning, and now she's kind of given up because they've been going back and forth. And again, I don't care as much about them doing, having a meeting or whatever. The problem is when I'm not made aware, and I told them this, I'm like, if you guys agree to put X, Y, and Z into the house, I can't protect you and the attorney can't protect you if we don't have it in writing. So there's so much stuff that's not in contract. For example, the beginning of the build, we walked through one of the other houses and I noticed none of the basements had sump pumps. And I said to them, I think it's a really good idea. They planned on finishing the basement at some point to get a sump pump in the basement. Just because, it's not flooding now. I've had this experience on my own. My house flooded and was already finished because we bought it that way. Our environment's changing. Everything's changing. In 10 years, you could have some water in the basement. So before they pour that concrete and before they do that, a sump pump. So they go out after it's poured. And I said, hey, you know, is the hole there for the sump pump? No, they didn't do it. Again, if we had had that in the like every step of the way, if they add something, they change something. If I don't know, I can't look for it later. So it's been kind of a nightmare situation. It's not my first build, but it's for my first, I mean, contract in February was supposed to be done by August, and now we're here and it's slated to be done at the end of this month. So it's been a fun one, that's for sure.
Anybody else have any other just new construction questions while we're kind of on this? Topic. Meg, anything else that's coming to mind that you just think is a good share for a buyer's agent that's you know, getting themselves into a new construction on the buy side?
Oh boy, there's a lot, but
Yeah.
but no, it's you know, and I know Amber, you've been trying to do your best to keep track, and normally, you know, we do like to see change orders. So just to get everything signed off on so that, you know, to your point, when you do that final walkthrough, they're not going through the house going, oh, hey, where's that crown molding we paid, you know, $2,000 extra to have in the dining room, or whatever the case may be. So like I said, I know it's hard because they have kind of gone around you, but you know, any change order, you know, we, especially if they're paying cash for it, we do like to have, you know, a written agreement signed off on everyone, and then proof of payment, you know, because the bank may also want to see those as well.
I've tried, trust me, but it is what it is at this point. We're so far in that I'm not going to change them now, I guess. So today will be an interesting discussion.
Good luck.
Who else has got something? Anybody got more questions for Dan? Anybody got a tricky finance thing they want to put on the table? Something that maybe you've learned regarding finance? Tracy.
Yeah, Dan, I have a question. So I have a buyer who's buying a property VA. The seller doesn't want to do any, of course, he doesn't want to do any VA. He doesn't want to do any repairs that's going to cost him any money. And the listing agent is the seller. And he's like, well, you can just tell your buyer to apply for a waiver, you know, a VA waiver. I've never done one
No,
before.
no, you can't do that. And
Yeah.
depending on what needs to be done, you could maybe get an escrow holdback for if it's something like say for instance, I did a VA escrow holdback that everything was subject to. This was new construction. Once it was completed in like the early springtime, so they weren't able to, or they weren't yet ready to. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It was in the middle of the summer, but they didn't want to finish the lawn yet, and that actually is a part of a final inspection on like a new purchase. So like the hydro seeding and all that, we actually were able to get that to do an escrow holdback for that in that scenario. So it depends. There are certain subject to items that you may be able to get done as an escrow holdback, and then there are several things that they would need to get for that. You know, you need to have an escrow holdback agreement. It needs to meet all the VA requirements on there. It has to be done within a certain amount of time. They have to go back out and verify that it's been completed after closing. But as far as just requesting a waiver because the appraisal is subject to repair, like that, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that honestly was what I thought. I've never had anybody do it before. I've never heard anybody do it before. And I did call Christina before I reached out to the lender about it. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't qualify in the situation. And of course, the listing agents, well, you're not supposed to ask for that until after the appraisal. I'm like, dude, you want us to go to the appraisal? And it's just a mess.
Yeah, I mean, you can get a waiver from the VA on like a condo approval. Kind of going back to our condo conversation from last week or a couple weeks ago, maybe. But so like in some cases, like the VA is more flexible with things because they care about their veterans, and they want, you know, they don't want to have you know, they don't want to create further issues for them. So in a lot of cases, like on VA condos specifically, you can write like a hardship letter for your buyer that says they need to that they're aware of. Like one of the issues was something about something not being non-transferable for this buyer. I can't remember all the details on this. The recent one I did, it was maybe wild, but they write a letter to the VA stating that they understand that the condo doesn't meet the requirements because of a certain thing, and they can get it pushed through. But that's for like a condo project review. But again, if it's like I don't know what exactly is it, like standard repairs, like peel and paint, rotted wood, broken glass type stuff, or
Yeah, like the house is very unique. It actually has a pool house connected to the house with a big open kitchen, family room and all that good stuff. And we were asking for something as simple as self-closing doors because an appraiser had told me. I asked an appraiser, he said, self-closing doors would, because obviously putting a fence inside your house is kind of weird. But he said self-closing doors, of course, handrails, self-closing doors for the garage and, peeling paint and the normal things, I didn't think we really, killed him on it, but, I guess he wants every single penny he can squeeze.
yeah, I mean, you would have a hard time getting most of that done, I think, as an escrow holdback too. But I mean, you could request it with the lender. Like I said, there has to be like a viable reason, like as to why something can't be done, at the time of closing, for them to allow an escrow holdback to be done for it.
Okay, unfortunately, it's just a little bit of a greedy listing agent. I wish I had a good reason for it, but I will have a conversation again with my client and see if we can't do something to save the deal because he really does love the house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, you got to have that appraisal. If it's subject to repair completion, like that's all got to be addressed with the VA, and that is a VA appraisal, not necessarily like if it were to come to another lender. Like I would say we could definitely take a look at it, but like still, if it were to go to another lender, it's still that appraiser is signed through the VA. Like all his reports go through the VA portal. So like that subject to appraisals already logged in there with the VA, and I'd be surprised if they were able to push it through without it getting, a final inspection report.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah. All right. Well, it's good to have a second opinion on that. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, not a problem.
Dan, we got a few minutes left here. Is any kind of experience shares that you wanted to bring to the table? Anything you dealt over the last week that, just to kind of educate this group on?
Within the last week, I wouldn't say I had anything like kind of crazy out of the ordinary with any loans. Thankfully, we got through the end of the month. We did have a client that we had her cleared to close, and she ended up having a medical emergency and went to the hospital, and she was there for quite a few days. In fact, I believe she's still there, but they were able to get out and close her loan. The attorney was able to facilitate that, and we got her all closed. We got her rate lock extended for it, no cost to take her through. Obviously, this was nothing to do with anybody's error or anything like that. So we're able to facilitate that. So that was one I hadn't really done a closing in that type of scenario. Definitely not lately. Maybe not never, but definitely not lately.
Any changes to programs or anything, hey, we're doing a lot of this lately and you guys just remember you have access to this or anything like that?
Well, I mean, again, we're seeing, a lot of the down payment assistance stuff being asked about. So since the time to own program is back out there, people are interested in that. And I think last week we talked about a pre-approval that we just issued for that program. We do have our Semper Elevate program that's a good alternative for that, which we've issued a few pre-approvals on that lately as well too. For the run-of-the-mill stuff, obviously, that's always there, but we've been seeing a lot more people kind of looking into those down payment assistance programs, I'd say, within the last week, at least especially on my end. Eric's actually traveling today, so that's why he's not here on the meeting with us. And I don't know if you guys have heard any of my kids kind of in the background this morning, but the babysitter a little bit late this morning, so I'm here with the boys.
Just in the chat, Dan, just anything with rates, what have they done over the last week?
Well, rates had been going up. Even the day after the election, the rates had kind of gone up a little bit. Again, following that 10-year note. I think yesterday we saw a little bit of improvement on it. And I'll be honest, I have not yet been able this morning to get logged in and see kind of where everything is moving this morning. But we're hoping to see these rates kind of level out. But again, if we knew that, we would we'd all be millionaires. But yeah, in general, over the last week since we talked, the rates had ticked up just a little bit more too.
We got a couple minutes left. Any last questions for Dan? And I'll throw one last scenario out there. We had an agent trying to put a deal together that felt like the agent on the other side was trying to be sneaky, or maybe not forthcoming with all the information, with a couple of things that happened early on in the transaction, and now something else that just kind of raised the red flag, where the seller needed to file for an extension before the purchase and sale even got signed, because their deal was subject to finding suitable housing. And they found out they weren't going to be able to get into that. So they had the suitable housing, but they wanted some language in there that it was subject to closing on that suitable housing. And they just got notified that suitable housing was going to get extended. And so now, after a little bit of a shaky start, now you've got this kind of thing in the middle, and it just wasn't feeling right to our agent. So the reason I bring this one up is I had both the other agent, who I've known since I got into the business, and our agent kind of reach out to me to say, hey, what's going on with so-and-so, right? So it was just interesting. Like, the agent on the other side is somebody that I've never had any issues with. I've personally done a bunch of transactions with, and there's never been anything like this. So, and then our agent is a great agent who we never get complaints about, who, does a lot of business. So it's just interesting. I think it doesn't hurt to, reach out, connect with colleagues, ask if you're in a weird deal, like, hey, this is going on. Have you ever done any business with this agent? Or I think I was able to kind of have a conversation with both sides to say, hey, look, I think you guys just got off to, on the wrong foot here, because we got two quality agents on this one. And sometimes there's just weird stuff that is out of your control, whether you've got the buyer or whether you've got the seller. So kind of giving people the benefit of the doubt. If it continues to happen, or you do a second transaction and it's happening again, now we're starting to see a pattern. But I would definitely say, if you're just feeling like it's a little off, reach out, see if, ask leadership, ask a colleague that you feel comfortable, somebody that, does a lot of deals. Hey, you ever done something with this agent? I just thought this was a little off and just felt weird about it. Maybe it is weird. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but I think, hopefully that transaction moving forward will be much smoother. And just having a third party that could just be objective to the situation, I think helped, and hopefully we'll smooth out that transaction. So just wanted to share it with the group in case you're running up against something like that on one of your transactions, either now or in the future. So that's all I got. Oh, Jen, what do you got? You want to add to that?
So it's not necessarily that, but I wanted to bring it up earlier. It's about a building lot, and it was listed as an approved building lot, and my buyers were interested. When I talked with the agent, he started saying, you could put the house over here, you could put it there, you could put it there. It's two separate building lots, and then there's a whole nother parcel that they're looking to purchase, a house on a bunch of acres. So my question is, the agent keeps saying you could put the house here and there when I met with him. So I said to my buyers, I go, you can't just put your house anywhere you want when you buy a lot. You need a building envelope. so something's not making sense. So I called the town and it's just zoned. It's not an approved building lot. So shouldn't he not be putting that verbiage into an MLS that it's an approved building lot if it's only zoned, or is that okay?
No, I mean, approved building lot means it's been approved,
Right.
right? I'm not aware of any other way to do this.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, Meg, if you have any thoughts on this, on anything that you've dealt with on your lots, or I'm assuming all of yours were approved from the get-go. It's not like you guys are getting these things approved as you go.
Right. No, it was approved as the whole subdivision.
As
Yeah.
a whole subdivision, yeah.
So I told him, I told my buyers, this is basically you're buying raw land. So anyways, we put the offer and, they still think it's worth a ton. Long story short, I never came across that where somebody listed it approved building lot. And then when I brought it up to the agent, he's like, oh yeah, no, this is just zoned. And I'm like, you have approved building lot in there. And he just keeps talking over that. So I don't know.
You can get it as an approved building lot, right? You could submit plans. You could say, hey, this is what could go on this, right? So every town's going to have what are called setbacks from right. There's this setback from the street, this setback from your side lines, and this setback on the back. And they could all be different. They could all be the same. They could, every town is going to be a little bit different on how they do those setbacks. And then you'll know, what can you build on this lot, right? And so they could get it to be approved for X, right? And if you wanted to go for something other than X, then you'd have to go through that approval process again. So it can be, but it just doesn't sound like this individual did it for this lot. Making sense?
Yeah, no, I understand it. And I that's why I was explaining to my buyer about building envelopes. Like, you need to know where your septic's going. You can't just put this here and then your septic's going to drain to your house. And, I explained all that. I just never saw someone put it in the MLS approved building lot, so my buyers thought it was a building lot, which it can be eventually, but right now it's raw land. So
Yep.
I just thought the verbiage was off.
Jen, did you have a comment on this?
I wanted to ask, do they have any, are they in any sort of period, like I guess an inspection period where they can do their due diligence with the town?
They can do all that. I've been back and forth with the town. I went and bought the maps and everything. The agent didn't even have that.
But they're still in that period though, where they could.
They don't want it right now because the seller is being greedy. So my buyer came in, they're willing to buy 2 of the lots and the house. So it's a three different deals, and it's a really good deal, cash, and the seller's being greedy. So we're just kind of letting them sweat right now. I'm like, yeah, we're looking at other properties. And he just called me. He's like, are you going to put another offer? I go, oh, they're a little insulted right now. So we're just waiting. And
I was just gonna say, because I misunderstood. I thought they were moving forward on this property, and I was gonna say to have an addendum just between you and the buyer. You could even print the listing the way it is, showing that it says building, approved building lot, and then I would just make an addendum saying that they have to do their due diligence to make sure that what's written in MLS is correct. And I don't know if you want to even go in further and say that it's according to, I don't know, whatever you want to say to be thorough, but that way it's just very clear that you've disclosed that. They understand that they have that time period to do that. So it doesn't like fall on you, because if the town's saying it's not.
Well, so the thing is they don't, so I should have said this in the beginning too. They don't even care if it's not buildable, to be honest. The reason they want to buy it is they just want all the land around the house. They don't want to look at other properties. And then later down the line, if they decide maybe we'll build, then they'll go ahead and see if they can do the perk test and all that. So I could put verbiage in there. Maybe they're not looking to build right now, just to cover me so it doesn't come back saying, oh, well, we thought they were approved. Yeah. But right now they're kind of walking. We'll see
Yeah.
what-
And I
Yeah.
don't know that you need to say that they don't want to build
Yeah.
because that could be assuming, but I would just make sure that they understand that it's disclosed as a building lot, that the town has not approved that they understand that, just so that that's like, I think that also put the pressure on them to investigate with the town, just to know what they're buying. And if they don't care, then at least they know about it, and it's not ever going to like fall back on you, you know?
So does that land purchase cover it? Because it says they're not perk testing, they're not this, they're not that, that whole
I
period.
mean, yeah, but the fact that they're not doing any of that doesn't cover you for the fact that you believe that there's misinformation in there. And I think you got to just clarify that, right? The fact that they signed and said, yeah, we're not doing this stuff doesn't mean we thought we were paying for X. We didn't get X.
Okay.
Right. So if you're finding out something that you believe is misrepresented, I think it definitely makes sense, like what Jen is saying, to get something in writing that, hey, even though the MLS says this is not what we have found. Right. And so I want you to acknowledge that you understand that is not what we have here.
Okay. Yeah. That
Yeah.
sounds, thank you.
Yeah. Margareta.
Just a quick question. Was that appraisal ever done, and did it come in with any specifics as to the usage?
They didn't, no appraisal that I'm aware of. He just went from other properties that were for sale, similar.
You might want to get a private appraisal done and see, and then maybe give you more negotiation power on the price of the land. I'm not sure what your price points are, but land that is not really used as for building plat, as the whole approval nonsense that's not really there, might give you a better price point. Just a note.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this topic, guys? All right, well, let's head into the weekend. Let's have some good showings. Let's have some great conversations. Let's get some conversion going. And actually, we got a holiday on Monday, so we will take Monday off, and we will be back at it on Tuesday. All right, take care, guys.
All right, see everybody. Have a good weekend.
Have a great one.